Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Roman emperors, in his now famous book Meditations, said, "Today I escaped anxiety," or no, I discarded it, because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. This quote from Marcus Aurelius is noteworthy for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he strode the earth in his sandals and toga nearly 2,000 years ago, and even a great Roman emperor struggled with anxiety. But secondly, he points out that anxiety comes from within, not from outsiders. It's a perception. Anxiety is a universal experience that has been the focus of my therapeutic practice for many years. Over the years, I've employed various approaches to help clients manage their anxiety, and one that consistently proves effective is ACT. Whilst ACT was developed by Stephen Hayes in the 1980s, I did my training with Russ Harris, a UK-born Australian whose books The Happiness Trap and The Confidence Gap are very accessible reads on the topic. ACT is not about eliminating anxiety, but about transforming the way we relate to it. This approach teaches us to accept the inevitability of anxiety and to live a meaningful life despite it. Given that we have evolved to react to issues around us on a survival, flight, fight, freeze basis, it makes sense to accept that anxiety is part of life. With that acceptance, we can move on from worrying about its existence to dealing with it effectively. A basic premise of ACT is straightforward. Most people fight or struggle with their anxiety, wishing it would just disappear. However, this struggle only intensifies the distress. Instead of trying to get rid of anxiety, ACT encourages us to accept that anxiety is a natural part of life, an evolutionary trait drawing our attention to something important. The distress arises not from our anxiety itself, but from our anxiety about our anxiety. ACT teaches us to stop avoiding, denying, and struggling with our inner emotions, and instead to accept these feelings as appropriate responses to certain situations. This acceptance allows us to move forwards in our lives rather than getting stuck or trapped. ACT revolves around 6 core principles that help individuals accept their emotions and commit to personal, values-driven actions. Let's walk through each principle in turn. Number 1 is acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation or giving up. It means acknowledging our feelings without judgment and recognizing that they are part of our human experience. By accepting our emotions, we can reduce their power over us and prevent them from dictating our actions. Acceptance involves acknowledging and embracing the full range of our thoughts and feelings and emotions, rather than trying to avoid, deny, or alter them. It's common to label emotions as positive, happiness, joy, calmness, or negative, sadness, anger, fear, or anxiety. The implication is that positive emotions are good and should be welcomed, while negative emotions are bad and should be avoided. This binary thinking is not particularly helpful. Emotions are neither good or bad, they just are. Consider that life's rich experience is about embracing all our emotions. Positive and negative emotions are like 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. For example, how would you know if you're happy if you've only ever been happy and never been sad? How would you know if you are calm and at peace if that's all you have ever experienced and never felt anxious? I worked with a client once who, after losing a loved one, was overwhelmed with sadness and anger. He believed these emotions were negative and bad, and as such fought hard to suppress them. He saw them as a weakness, and he was letting his former loved one down by not being strong and turning to excessive alcohol use as a coping mechanism. Through our sessions, he learned that acceptance rather than avoidance of his emotions was key. Accepting that love and pain were just 2 sides of the same coin. This was revelatory for him. To illustrate, I suggested that we delete all the good memories he had of his loved one because that would cure him and remove the pain. Quite rightly, he reacted strongly to this and was obviously totally against the idea. But this allowed him to see that without the great memories and the love he felt for that person, there could be no pain. This acceptance was transformative, allowing him to process his grief healthily and reduce his reliance on alcohol. The second part of ACT is cognitive diffusion. Now, for many, this is a bit of an odd term, but it simply means putting distance between ourselves and our distressing thoughts and feelings. This reduces their harmful effects. Instead of getting entangled up in these thoughts, we learn to observe them without judgment. Techniques for cognitive diffusion include observing thoughts without judgment. For instance, noticing that I'm having a thought, I'm going to fail, rather than just accepting that as a fact. Singing a thought, turning a distressing thought into a song. It reduces its impact. Poking fun at the thought. Here comes the doom and gloom thought, or here comes the circus again. And naming the thought, such as, here's the I need a drink thought, to create distance from it. I like to suggest giving unhelpful thoughts a name. In a sense, we're putting distance between us and our thoughts. We are not our thoughts, they are just thoughts. We are removing your intrinsic ownership of the thoughts and placing them in little boxes separate from you. I recall a client who was plagued with the thought, I'm not good enough. This thought dominated his life and his thinking, causing significant distress. By practicing cognitive diffusion, particularly by labeling his thought as the self-doubt thought, he began to see it as just a thought rather than an absolute truth. This shift reduced the thought's power over him and improved his self-esteem. I like my clients to give the troublesome thought a name like Karen or Dave, so we use phrases like, I'm noticing Karen or Dave have come into the room. I'm truly sorry to all those Daves and Karens out there, but we could equally use Basil and Sybil. Studies have shown the effectiveness of cognitive diffusion in reducing and managing anxiety. By creating distance between ourselves and our thoughts, we can gain a clearer perspective and respond effectively to the challenges we face. Cognitive diffusion helps us see thoughts as temporary and not necessarily reflective of reality. Probably my favourite cognitive diffusion technique, and the one that seems to resonate most with my clients, is what I call leaves on a stream or leaves on a river. I ask my clients to close their eyes and imagine a stream in autumn. The leaves, twigs and branches fall from the trees and land on the river, sailing on down. Now I give my clients two options. You can go down into the river and grab onto all those leaves, twigs and branches, and then notice what happens. They get totally tangled up in the debris and they can't move. So I now give a second option, which is to just get out of the river and just watch the leaves and twigs and branches sail on by. Now obviously the second one is much more enjoyable than the first. Now the twigs, the leaves, the branches are like thoughts. We grab onto them and become entangled in them, making life much harder. Or we can simply observe them and watch them come and go. The third part of ACT is being present. Being present involves mindfulness, being fully engaged with the here and now without judgment. This means observing our thoughts and feelings as they are, without trying to change them. Experiencing events clearly and directly can promote behavioural change. Mindfulness has been the cornerstone of many successful interventions in my practice. For example, I had one client with chronic anxiety. They found it really difficult to focus on daily tasks because she was constantly worrying about future scenarios. By practicing mindfulness, she learned to bring her attention back to the present moment, which significantly reduced her anxiety and improved her concentration. Mindfulness encourages us to fully experience the present moment, which can reduce the tendency to ruminate on the past or worry about the future. This can lead to a greater clarity, focus and peace of mind. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on mindfulness here, as we have a whole video dedicated to it, but I'd just like to give one example of a mindfulness technique, just for now, and then we'll move on. Probably the simplest mindfulness technique you can do is counting your breath. Find a comfortable place to sit where you won't be disturbed. Get yourself nice and comfy and sit upright, alert but relaxed. Now close your eyes. Take a breath in through your nose and count to 4. Hold the breath for 4, and then breathe out through your mouth for 4. Hold the breath once more, and then repeat this cycle for 5 times. As you do this, you'll notice that pretty quickly your mind will start to drift into all sorts of thoughts about all sorts of things. I need to do the washing up. I wonder if little Johnny is okay at school. What are we going to have for dinner tonight? I need to get back to work. The potential list is endless. You've not gone wrong here, right? This is how our monkey mind works. It's restless. It never sits still. So just notice that your concentration has shifted and go back to the breathing and counting. This will happen repeatedly. There's no reason here to get upset and angry with yourself. Just go back to the breath and the counting. And this is mindfulness. Noticing how your mind operates and refocusing on a simple task. And that's all there is to it. The fourth part of ACT is self as context. Now, self as context is another strange term, but quite simply, it's the concept that people are more than their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. I like to refer to it as our observing self, and it helps us understand that we're not our thoughts, but the awareness behind these thoughts. This links back to the idea in cognitive diffusion, separating our thoughts from ourselves and reducing our identification with them as being us. This is a major theme of ACT. The reason seeing a coach or a therapist can be so useful is they see you as the client from a distance. When we're struggling, we get wrapped up or entangled in the weeds of the situation. What we need is perspective, and this is achieved through observing ourselves impartially. If you're trying to navigate through a thick forest, it's really difficult to see what's going on when we're at ground level. All we see is lots of trees. Having the ability to rise up above the forest and see the whole picture, the trees in their true context, is extremely useful. Consider a client preparing for a major presentation. She had 2 conflicting thoughts. My presentation will go well, and my presentation will go badly. Can you guess which of these thoughts was most prevalent and strongest? Right, the negative thought. As we've discovered, we tend to think about the future in a negatively biased way. By helping the client realize that she was neither of these thoughts, but just the awareness observing them, she could detach from the anxiety these thoughts were creating. This detachment enabled her to focus on the process of preparation for the presentation rather than being paralyzed by the fear of the presentation. Understanding that we're more than our thoughts can help us detach from them and view them with greater objectivity. This can reduce the impact of negative thoughts and promote a healthier sense of self. The fifth part of ACT is values. Values are the things that are most important to us in life. When working with clients, this is one of my favourite activities, where I take the client through a values exercise to help them identify what's truly important to them. Example of values are health, achievement, challenge, honesty, and integrity. Over the years, I've learned that living your life in alignment with your values has huge benefits. One of the biggest is that it simplifies a common source of anxiety, which is decision making. Knowing your core values acts like a map or a compass to help you navigate life's choices. We all know that decision making can have a real mental load and often bring on anxiety. But when you have a clear set of values, it simplifies things. Instead of overthinking every option, your values can give you a guide to follow, reducing the stress and uncertainty. It's like having a built-in system that points you in the right direction so you don't get lost in worry about making decisions. Less stress, less anxiety, and clearer decisions. Living by your values really helps take some of the mental pressure off. Studies also highlight the importance of values in psychological well-being. One study in 2008 by Lundgren found that values-based interventions can enhance quality of life and reduce anxiety symptoms. One client feeling lost and directionless discovered through this exercise that his core values included family and creativity. He kept his top 5 values in his top pocket and in the morning pulled them out and checked them and aligned himself for the day. Then at night he rechecked his values and took 5 minutes auditing whether he had faithfully lived that day in alignment with his values. He became one of the most focused and intentional clients I've had the benefit of working with. By aligning his actions with his values, he found a renewed sense of purpose and significantly reduced his anxiety. Living in alignment with our values can provide a sense of meaning and direction, which can reduce these feelings of anxiety and help us navigate life's challenges with greater confidence. To identify your values, simply Google values list and you'll find lots of websites with values lists. Just choose one and pick out your top 10 values. Now when you've done this, now you need to whittle this down from 10 to 5, which is the harder piece. These are the words that mean the most to you and are your core values. Now spend some time reflecting on whether you live your life in alignment with those values. And if you don't, it's time maybe to start reorientating your life to those values and taking action, which takes us to the final core principle of ACT, committed action. Committed action involves taking concrete steps to incorporate changes that align with our values and lead to positive change. This may involve goal setting, exposure to difficult thoughts and experiences, and skill development. In life, we always have choices. We can choose to take action to address our issues. These are called towards moves, where we align our actions with our values. Or we can make away moves to avoid discomfort and distress. For example, a client with social anxiety wanted to build better friendships. Their values were community and fun, but often they stayed at home to avoid the anxiety. By understanding that by doing nothing, she was making a choice that moved her away from what was important to her, she began to make towards moves, like attending social events, which ultimately improved her social life and reduced her anxiety. Taking committed action can help us move towards our goals and values, and even in the face of anxiety. This can lead to positive changes in our lives and reduce the impact of anxiety. Some examples of committed action techniques are goal setting. Define specific, actionable goals that are aligned with your values. Break these goals down into smaller, manageable steps. For example, if your value is community, your goal might be to join a local club or attend a social event. Start with small steps like attending one event per month and gradually increase your involvement. Exposure tasks. Identify tasks or activities that you've been avoiding due to anxiety. Gradually expose yourself to those situations in a controlled and systematic way. For instance, if you have social anxiety, you may start by attending a small gathering and gradually work up to larger social events. Skill development. Identify any skills that you need to develop in order to achieve your goals. This might include communication skills, relaxation techniques, or assertiveness training. Invest time in developing these skills through practice and training. ACT offers a comprehensive framework for managing anxiety by embracing it rather than avoiding it. Through acceptance, cognitive diffusion, being present, self as context, values and committed actions, individuals can transform their relationship with anxiety and lead more fulfilling lives. As a coach and a therapist, I've seen the profound impact these principles can have on my clients, helping them move forwards despite their anxieties. It's important to remember that ACT is not a cure, but a means of coping with anxiety. By adopting these principles, you can learn to manage your anxiety effectively, allowing it to take its rightful place as part of your life, rather than it letting it control you. This shift in perspective can make all the difference in leading a life that's rich, full, and meaningful.